54 patients with sleep disorders. Are there more patients with sleep disorders? So therefore, what's your population? All patients with sleep disorders. And out of those patients with sleep disorders, I'm going to take a sample of 254 of those patients with sleep disorders. Okay, so I'm not going to test every person in the United States, only those with sleep disorders. I'm going to put them all in one virtual room and pull out 254 out of all that population. Okay? The next one, you had to identify the level of measurements. Now, I gave you the notes. Remember, nominal is the lowest level. Nominal, no math involved. Kind of like the word name. The number on your jersey, the name, the state, the zip code. Something I can't do any math to. Ordinal. Ordinal, I have some kind of an order here. I could say it's the smallest, it's the largest, it's the first, it's the second. I have some kind of order, but I really can't say, like gauging your pain, rate your pain. I really can't say that your pain level of 10 is the same as my pain level of 10. So there's a small amount of math measurements in here. Interval. Remember interval, time, and temp. I can gauge the difference, but I can't exactly say today is twice as hot as yesterday. I can't do that. But I can say it is 10 degrees cooler than yesterday, 5 degrees warmer than yesterday. It's 20 minutes past before the 20 minutes ago, whatever. Ratio, the highest, you can make a ratio. If you could say something is half as much, twice as much, a third as much, a quarter as much, you can make some kind of meaningful ratio. So a list of uniform numbers retired by each Major League Baseball team would be what level? Nominal. This is the one I want, the uniform. The number of products sold by a toy manufacturer for each quarter for the current fiscal year. The number, this is what I'm looking at, the number of products. So let's see, if they sell 10 products this quarter, 30 products next quarter. What level? Ratio. Oh, I thought you said 3. I thought you were raising. That's what I said. I thought you said 3, the third one. Sorry about that. Ratio, absolutely ratio. Did I make twice as many? Did I make half as much? If you can say that, you got ratio. The finishing times of runners in the Boston Marathon. Interval, absolutely interval. I got some meaningful differences. One finished 26 minutes before the other, but I can't say they ran twice as fast. I can't gauge that. So be careful on these. Also be careful with, here's the tricky one, the number of the page you are reading versus the number of pages you read. What's the difference between that? The number of the page you are reading versus the number of pages you read. What's the first one? Nominal. What's the second one? Ratio. The number of pages you read. So when I'm counting things up, that's the number of. When I'm stating something, that's the page number. See the difference? That's a big difference there. Okay. Stop me if you have any questions, because these are great multiple choice questions. Decide which method of data collection you would use to gather your data for a study. Remember, we had surveys, we had experiments, we had simulation, all those kinds. So a study on the effect of low dietary intake of vitamin C and iron levels an iron on lead levels in adults. Intake of vitamin C and iron on the lead levels in adults. Is that, what would I do? What would I prove that as? Look at your notes. What are the 4 ways to collect data? What's your data collection? Experimental. What does that mean? To get an outcome. You're making it a change happen. What else? Observation. What are you doing in observation? You observe. Do you give them anything? In experimentals, I always have a control group. I have a control group versus a experimental group. Okay. What else? Simulation. Sometimes I can't give somebody radiation, but I want to know the effect of radiation on their bone density. I can't give them radiation, so I run a simulation. And what's the last one? Survey. Survey, population versus sample. Sometimes I can survey a whole population, sometimes I can't. If I wanted to know everybody's favorite sport, I could give you guys a survey in here. That would be my population. If I wanted to know the whole school, I would do a sample. What's it called when I survey a whole population? Census. Good. So the first one, what would you say the first one is? Experimental. Could I give people vitamin C and iron? Could I give them vitamin C and iron? Is it harmful? No, I could give them vitamin C and iron as long as it's not past their limit. In fact, I think vitamin C, if you take too many vitamin C, it just supposedly expels out of your system. So I can give people that and check to see what's happening. I might want to have a control group, like remember the placebo effect also? What's a placebo effect? I have a control group versus my experimental group, and sometimes we get a placebo effect. What's a placebo effect? Good. When my control group thinks they're actually getting that experimental drug, I give them the same little pill that I give to my experimental group. But theirs is probably just a little nothing pill, like a piece of candy pill or something. It doesn't have the vitamin C and the iron in it. But they don't know it. But because they don't know it, you get some kind of a placebo effect, like I'm taking this vitamin C, I feel healthier, I feel stronger. So that's your placebo effect. How about the ages of people living 500 miles from your home? A sampling survey. Would I want to send out a survey to everybody here? I could do that, or I could just send out a sample. This would be my population, but that within 500 miles, if you think about it, within 500 miles is a pretty wide radius, isn't it? Do I want to ask everybody within 500 miles? Nope. So I want to send out a little sampling. Send out a sampling survey. Okay. Now, the next question asks you for sampling techniques. Go to your notes. Give me your sampling techniques. What's one? Random sampling. Random number sampling. This comes from like your random table generator. Everything is done at random, but this one's a random number generator. Like the table in the back of your book. Your calculator has a random number generator. What else? Convenience. What does convenience mean? Yeah, I'm running a survey, and I ask my best friends what type of music they like. They probably like the same music as me. We hang out together all the time. So, be careful of convenience. What's another one? Systematic. Systematic, this is what they do in gym. Count off. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll take all the ones. I'll take all the twos here. What's another one? On your notes. Stratified. What's stratified? You got to know these. These are great 2-point questions. Multiple choice questions. Stratified. What does a stratified rock look like? I'm a science person, sorry. A stratified rock has layers, doesn't it? Stratified. It's layered. So you're taking a little bit from everything. Think of stratified. This is a perfect example. Some freshmen, some sophomores, some juniors, some seniors. That's stratified. Okay? And what's the last one? Cluster. Cluster means I took all my sophomores or all my juniors. I took all of one group. Stratified, I take some out of every group. Cluster, I take all of one group. Okay, so a journalist goes to a beach and asks people how they feel about water pollution. Of these 5, which sampling technique is that? Convenience. It's very convenient to go ask people that sit on the beach what they think about water pollution. And what should their opinion be? Feel very strongly about water pollution because they're sitting there on the beach, right? They don't want to go to a polluted beach. For quality assurance, every 5th engine part is selected from an assembly line and tested for durability. Systematic. There's a system to this. Every 5th one. So it's still done at random. I have them going through the conveyor line randomly, and every 5th one I check. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to move that one up. I don't know what it says. A study on attitudes of smoking is conducted at a college. The students are divided by class, freshmen, sophomore, juniors. Then a random sample. What does the rest of it say? What does the rest of number 4 say? C. From each class. So which one is that? Stratified. Good. Stratified. Some from each class. What if I just took all the juniors? Cluster. Great 2-point multiple choice questions here. Questions? All right, let's get the next one set up because you will see a graph. All right, the hardest part is getting the table. So remember how we set our table up? We have to have a certain way to set it up. We found the highest one. We found the lowest one. So look through those numbers and tell me what the highest one is. 157. Everybody should write this down. What's the lowest one? 101. So we did this. The max minus the min over the number of classes. And we always round up. Otherwise, you could be short in your table. This is how we start. This is called our class width. Okay, I should have just brought this up just a little bit more. Okay. All right. We find our class width. So we say this. 157 minus 101 divided by 5. Be careful when you put it in your calc because use your fraction bar. Don't get stuck because if you don't do that, you need parentheses around your numerator. So tell me what you get. Divided by 5, number of classes. Say 11 point what? 11.2? So now, round up. You round up to 12. This is your class width. Okay, so this is how we start. These are my classes. This is so important that you get this because you're going to see one of these graphs on your final, and you're going to have to make the table. So you start with your smallest entry. Your class width, remember this, we added down like this. Because if I do this, 1 through 4, and I do 5 through something, how many did I have between 1 through 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 4 of them. So this is where I'm getting my 4 from. Okay, so be careful. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my 4 goes this way, not the other way. So add 12 to this. Sorry. I cheat. I move it over. I'm 13. Okay, keep adding 12 all the way down. Till you have 5 classes. Now, what number comes before 113? 112. If I subtract these, just like I did here, if I subtract 4 minus 1, it looks like I have 3. However, 1, 2, 3, 4 has 4. So when you subtract these, it looks like you have less, but you got to count the ends. So just keep adding 12 all the way down now. Remember doing this? Then we found the midpoint, because the midpoint is one of the things we can use in our graph. We can use your x-axis as a midpoint, because it will be equally spaced apart. So the midpoint, all I have to do is add these two together, divide by 2. So add those together, divide by 2. Nope, keep the midpoint the way it is. What do you get for your midpoint? 106.5. Now all you have to do is add 12 all the way down. Your class width is 12. Keep that decimal. We did, for an ogive, we have to use class boundaries. Class boundaries was just so that there's no gap between. If midpoint works fine, you don't have to worry about it. But if you use your boundaries, you have a gap between 112 and 113. Remember, we would have a gap, but we always keep our bars touching. So to get around that, we do class boundaries. A class boundary, if I spell it right, says drop the left side 0.5, raise the right side 0.5. So I'm going to get 100.5 to 112.5. So now I'm not going to have any gaps in here. See this 112? It starts right there. So now my bars will be touching. If you use your boundaries, you got to use your class boundaries. If you use your midpoint, that's fine. So just keep them going like that. That's me. That's 160. Okay, Naya, what's next? Have you written this down? What's next? What should I find next?
After you find the top down,
Mm-hmm.
you have to do the intersection with the top two.
Right through the what? I have a whole list of data. I need to know what categories they fall into. So why don't we do frequency? How do I do my frequency? Yeah, like tick marks, right? I have 108. Where does 108 fall? In my first one. We're going to do tick marks all the way through. Where does 139 fall? In this guy right here. Where does 120 fall? In this guy right here. Remember doing your tick marks?
No. I don't remember either.
You don't either?
No.
No, seriously. How do you put these into these groups? Okay, so how do you put these into these categories? Frequency. So I want to see, where did they fall? Where does 108 fall? Into this one. I put a tick mark. Where does 139 fall? Into this one. I put a tick mark. And that I know because I'm a little bit off on my lines. So at the end, you're going to add up all your tick marks. And what should they add up to now, Sarah? 25. So there were 3 of these. I added them for you. 11 of these, 7, and 2 and 2. That's not a 12. That was a tick mark. Should add up to 25 because we had 25 pieces of data here. If they didn't add up to 25, something's wrong. Yeah.
When you put the actual number, isn't that a separate column?
Or you can make it a separate column. You can make a tally spot and then a frequency spot, or you can put your frequency and your tally together. You can do it either way. A tally probably makes it a little bit neater. There's only 25, so that wasn't so bad. So now, I'm going to do a relative frequency. Anybody remember how I do a relative frequency? So yeah, well we know, that's your cumulative, but we know they add up to 25, so relative means relative to that. So I have, good. So we're going to make a ratio. Relative to that 25, part over whole. Part over whole, we're going to just get them to be decimals. So this becomes 0.12, this becomes 0.44, this becomes 0.28, 0.08, 0.08. And what should this column add up to? 1. Good, because that's 100%. Now I'm going to do my cumulative frequency. That's going to give me my ogive. This is for my ogive. So I start with my smallest, and then what do? Good. You keep adding to the next one. Then you add 11. Then you add 7. Then you add 2. Then you add 2 more. This is the table that you need to make those graphs. Okay? Now to get your box and whisker, anybody remember how to get the box and whisker? Okay, so we need the min and max, the Q1, the Q3, and the median. How can I get those? Can't you do it on the calc? Why not? You're going to put this into your L1. You're going to go to the bottom of your summary number. You're going to do a 1-var stat. You're going to go to the bottom 5. It's called the 5 summary numbers. So you guys are going to work on these graphs. And then tomorrow we'll take a look at the graphs. You will see you will see this table on your final. You will see one of these graphs on your final. Maybe even 2 of them. Did the hard part with you. I wanted to do this with you because I didn't want you to do it incorrectly, because that's what you remember. So I wanted to do it with you. So you guys were